Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our presentation. This is a presentation taking place during fall semester of 2020, the great COVID-19 semester, so to say. And we have presenting to us tonight, his name is Jacob Valentine. He is an alumni of Western, and he's currently a soon-to-be graduating pharmacy student at Marshall University School of Pharmacy. So he will take over, and Jacob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zach. All right, as Zach mentioned, my name is Jacob Valentine. I'm going to be going over today the basics for applying to pharmacy school and some tidbits that you should probably know as you're applying and some of the fundamentals essentially to try and to get in and apply. So a little bit about myself here. I am currently a PharmD candidate at Marshall University School of Pharmacy. I will graduate this year. Actually, I am in my P4 year doing my last year of rotations, which is essentially like a work study. As Zach mentioned, I graduated from Western Carolina University. I was the class of 2016. I got my BS in biology with a pre-health concentration or pre-pharmacy concentration. They've kind of changed it around just a little bit, how they classify it. And I currently work at CVS as an intern, which is a little bit different than rotations. You can do the same thing as rotations, but I actually get paid for this one. While I was at Western, I was also a residential assistant in Scott Hall. Go Cats. So we're going to go ahead and just dive on into the application process. The very first thing you should know is to decide whether pharmacy school is right for you. This is a very important thing. You're going to be spending the next 4 years living and breathing the material and stuff from school. Therefore, you should make sure that you want to do this for the rest of your life. All of this is just a quick summary of what we're going to go over during the presentation. You're going to want to create your PharmCast account during your time at Western or any other university that you attend. So if you do any classes at a technical school, you will also want to take these prerequisite courses. PharmCast has a checklist that you're going to want to go through, which we'll go over, and I'll show you how the checklist goes and how you will want to submit that information. You're going to make sure that all your transcripts from each university is submitted to PharmCast. You're going to want to get some letters of recommendations from professors or public figures in order to apply. You're going to register to take your PCAT exam. You're going to complete school requirements. You're going to review your application, and you'll also, of course, pay your fees to try and apply. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to start actually diving in and going in depth. That was just a quick overview of the entire process and everything that we are going to talk about today. Most important thing, is pharmacy right for you? People who enter pharmacy school are usually very detail oriented. They're avid about learning. They constantly want to learn new things and try new things. You're also going to be very organized. In order to want people who are very organized tend to love to do pharmacy as well. You're going to also want to help people and have them have healthier and live better lives. And you're also, of course, going to want to be interested in healthcare, how medications work. There's a lot that goes into being more than just a regular retail pharmacist is what most people would think of. You're not counting by fives. Pharmacy is a completely different world. You have to remember that this program is a doctorate program, and it is very strenuous, and you will spend a lot of time and effort into learning all the material that you need to learn in order to be a successful pharmacist. PharmCast. Our journey starts here at PharmCast, where everything you will do as you're applying goes into this PharmCast website. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to begin starting on the checklist here on PharmCast. It's going to lead you step by step through the process to apply to pharmacy school. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the PharmCast website this pulled up here for you guys. All right, so here is the PharmCast website that you will start to try and apply for pharmacy school. At the very beginning, obviously, you're going to go over here to start your application. Whenever mine decides to load up here. And you're going to want to create an account. Obviously, I've made a fake account just to apply. And if you have any questions as to why I use a friend of mine's, is because apparently PharmCast said I didn't have an account any longer after I applied or after I've done everything. But then when I tried to create an account, it said an account already exists. So I had to use a friend's email to attempt to set up an account to show you all this. Let me go ahead and log in here. All right, so what this is going to do is you're going to start off by entering either personal information, as if this will lead you literally step by step as to what you need to do. Your advisor, everything. You will just fill all of these out and complete each section at a time. So, and then your academic history. This is where you'll send your transcripts to. You'll send them on the PharmCast as well. PharmCast will also have you type in your transcript prior. Basically what happens here is you will look at your final grades for your classes that you've started taking as the prerequisites and go ahead and pre-enter what grade you made in these, and it will give you a preliminary transcript scores. However, it will not verify them until the transcript is sent. It will send that out to pharmacy schools, but it will not give the final overall. So this is a little bit different from when I did it. So here you'll put your experiences, everything. Everything goes in PharmCast. The next step would be to add programs. This is where you apply to each individual school that you are currently thinking about applying to. It has every pharmacy school in the country that you can pick from. My suggestion is all schools are not fully accredited, which can hurt you when applying for jobs or to even take the national board exam. Some schools that are, for instance, American University of Health Sciences right here is a pre-candidate for accreditation. A lot of those students will not be allowed to take their board exams and get certified to actually practice as a pharmacist. So yes, they may go get their doctorate of pharmacy from this school, but it is not recognized by the Board of Pharmacy. The best suggestion I have is you go up to this accreditation, and I would put full accreditation as you are searching, and it will pull up all colleges that are fully accredited that's in the country. The 3 that are in North Carolina currently are Wingate, Campbell, and the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. High Point University has a pharmacy. However, they are still undergoing the accreditation process. For instance, when I started, Marshall University here is fully accredited, but when I first started, they were not. Or they were in the process of becoming accredited, and then as I started my P1 year, they got full accreditation. It takes a couple of years for schools to get accreditation. The accreditation board just comes and makes sure they meet all the general requirements for a pharmacy school. And what you're going to want to do is by the time you're done, you will end up submitting your application, and I would highly recommend going over everything prior to and making sure everything's correct. Now, keep in mind, each school that you apply to is going to cost you money. So for instance, if I go here and I had one click just a second ago, it was $175 for one. Well, now I just clicked on 4, and as you can see, the total fees amount is rising. It will go up per school, and we'll get in more into that here in just a little bit when I start talking about the costs a little bit and tuitions. So let me go ahead and go back to PowerPoint. There we go. And again, as I said, PharmCast it will be your lifeline. You will do everything through PharmCast. To talk about some of the classes that you're going to need to take, to get into pharmacy school. These are the general prerequisite courses that are required to get into pharmacy school. You'll have to take 2 semesters of an English. You'll have to take 1 semester of a calculus, a semester of stats, 2 biology, 2 chemistry. So at Western, that'd be bio 140, 141, chemistry 139 and 140. You'll have to take human anatomy and physiology, micro, organic chem 1 and 2, physics 1, and some schools require physics 1 and 2, and a social science, so that would be like your political science course. This is on the left here. These classes that I have listed are not all inclusive. This is just Marshall's prerequisite requirements. You need to keep in mind when applying to different schools, some of them have different prerequisites, which can be a hassle when you're trying to complete a degree, or so you just need to be mindful of what classes you're taking and also how many credit hours you're taking, and also as to which schools that you are going to apply to. Also, for the biology program at Western, I was not aware of this whenever I went through. If you take human anatomy and physiology 1 and 2, it will count as your animal physiology prerequisite. I made the mistake of taking A&P 1 and taking animal physiology and thinking that would suffice and meet that human physiology credit. However, it did not. I had to take a class in the summer in order to meet that requirement, because apparently some things were missing off of the syllabus that the pharmacy school I was applying to wanted. This needs to be kept in the back of your mind. Some pharmacy schools will not let you take a class in the summer prior to going. You will have to have all prerequisites completed prior to being accepted. They will tell you that you'll be put on the wait list. So in other words, you'll be sitting out another year. So just keep in mind that all prerequisites need to preferably be completed prior to getting in. Transcripts. You need to make sure all transcripts from your school, from every school that you attend to, is sent to the PharmCast website. They will give you a routing number or a number to send it to on the website, on the PharmCast website. Your GPA is also calculated on a 4-point scale, as in 4, 3, 2, 1, A, B, C, and D. I know Western doesn't do that. They still do the plus-minus system. This can be a double-edged sword a little bit. It's good if you have like a B-, because then you'll get a B instead of just those, instead of the 2.7 or 2.8 points or whatever. So it'll count as a 3, which is great. Also, with your transcripts, you need to keep in mind that only your prerequisite courses have. So you might do a little bit worse on your prereqs, but you might think you have a higher GPA than what you do. If you take easier courses, and your Western GPA could potentially be a 3.4, 3.5 or higher, but then your prerequisite GPA is only like a 2 or a 2.8 or a 3, and that's all that matters when applying to pharmacy school, is this prerequisite GPA. They won't really look at what your other class GPA is. With transcripts also, you need to make sure that you send them off to PharmCast. On PharmCast, you can request to have the transcript sent, which will give you that routing number, but you have to go into One Stop at Western. You have to go to One Stop and actually have them physically send it to them. I sent in my application in October to go to pharmacy school. I had everything completed. I requested for my transcripts to be sent. All was good. I looked later, about December. Transcripts still hadn't been completely processed, and was wondering what was going on, and tried to figure it out. So I called the PharmCast website, and they told me they hadn't received my transcripts. So I had to march myself down to One Stop and try and get my transcripts sent off to PharmCast. So it was about late January probably when my full application finally got sent off. So I was late in the game with my applications being sent off in February, which didn't hurt me obviously, but it's better to know to apply early than to apply later.
Jake, I know I said I wouldn't interrupt, but I want to make a clarification just so we don't have any confused students out there. Western no longer has a One Stop. Any transcript requests would be processed through the student's MyWCU account. And if if anybody has questions about stuff like that, just come and talk to me. I'm happy to walk you through that process.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, that makes your all's lives easier. You can just request it on MyWCU and have it sent off rather than having to march down there and get them to fax it off. So that helps you guys out quite a bit. Moving on to letters of recommendation. Almost every school recommends at least 3 letters of recommendation. These will be posted on PharmCast, like on one of those links that I was showing you all earlier. On PharmCast, you're going to want to choose not to view these letters. You will talk to the individual persons that you want to send in the letter of recommendation. You'll tell them where to send it off to. It'll tell you on PharmCast where to have them send it. And basically, you're not going to want to view these. You're not going to want to see them for yourself. I, to this day, haven't seen the letters of recommendation from the people that I asked to write mine. It shows confidence and shows that you have the utmost confidence that you know those people are going to highly recommend you and speak good about you. And with that being said, you need to pick a choice. You need to choose very, very, very carefully who you have write these letters of recommendation. You need to make sure you know them very well and that they can speak well about you and talk about you in detail. Recommendations that I use, for instance, I used an employer. I used a professor, so Dr. Darby Harris, if he is still there. He taught genetics whenever I was going through. Zach's shaking his head because he's probably taking him right now. I had him as my professor, and a public official. You could have a pastor. You can even have a pharmacist, a mayor, somebody else that's not either an employer or a professor, basically, could suit that category. When I was applying, I had 4 letters of recommendation on PharmCast uploaded because I wasn't sure if one of them was going to get done in time. They all did. I had all 4 of them, but PharmCast made me choose 3. So that's, if you post a bunch and you choose not to view them, you might want to just pick your best 3 and know. That's why I said you need to know who is writing your recommendations and how well that they can speak about you. PCAT. This can be very important, maybe not as much anymore. As I was applying through pharmacy school, the PCAT was required by Marshal. It is no longer a requirement, and I went back to before I gave this speech because it's been a while since I've tried to apply or look at applying to pharmacy school. But the PCAT is not required by a lot of schools now. You just have to check their individual websites and see. That being said, a lot of stuff, like I said, everything is through PharmCast, but you need to check yourself on each one of these individual schools and universities. They will all have different requirements as to what they are wanting. I recommend still taking the PCAT, even if it is not required, because some schools still do require it. And if you happen to apply to one and not take it, then you are already at a loss on that school. Also, it makes you look better as an applicant. You're doing more work and it's making you look like you're putting in more effort to try and apply yourself to getting into these schools. All right. And for studying for the PCAT, I recommend at least 3 months out, at least at a minimum. A lot of your prerequisite courses that you're taking will cover this material. It's a gigantic book. So it's going to be kind of hard. It's kind of hard to cover it in depth for 3 months. It's possible I got through it, but it's a lot of material to get through. I recommend just focusing on your prerequisites very diligently and knowing it back and forth and trying your best in your prerequisites. And then about 3 months out, I'd recommend going through the PCAT book. Maybe do a chapter or so a day. Make some flashcards. A lot of it is anatomy and physiology based, biology, chemistry. That's what they really hit on. Pharmacy schools also generally recommend that you have a 50 percentile or greater. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to make a 50 percentile to get in. Like I said, a lot of pharmacy schools are not requiring it and mandating it right now. So you can, there's a standard deviation of where you could fall in place between that 50 percentile. I scored a 41 percentile and that was good enough. And they tell you anywhere from 40 and above your first try is a solid score. what you're going to do to register for this, you're going to want to go on the Pearson website. So you can go on Google and just type in take PCAT or anything along those lines, or go to the Pearson website and you'll have a PCAT category. You can just click on that. You'll set a test date, pay your fee, and then go to whatever Pearson location that you chose to go sit for the PCAT. Be wary, this is kind of a long exam. I think it was 3 hours, something like that, 3 or 4 hours of sitting there. You can get breaks during it, but you're kind of in a closed off cubicle with a camera above you, a person walking behind you, one sitting. Like, it's a little nerve wracking. So just keep that in mind, stay calm, sleep well the night before, eat a good breakfast, wake up. If I were you, I'd wake up a little bit early, calm your nerves a little bit, go and just do your best. Also with the PCAT, your first question more than likely will be a essay format question. Just as a hint, mine was about carbon emissions, and it wanted to basically discuss what we could do to reduce our carbon emissions as a whole in the US and why and how would that be effective. And I think you have it's either 30 minutes to type up your essay question. So, I mean, you've got plenty of time to do it, but I'd take your time and make sure that you can hit on all the points that you want on that and just type away. But make sure all your grammar and stuff is correct, because they will look at that as well. Supplemental applications. This is where each individual school comes into play, and it is very, very important. Everything is through PharmCast with the exception of this, or looking at each school's requirements. Supplemental applications are on each school's website. They will have a form. I have Marshall's here. Let me share this with you guys. All right, here's an example of a supplemental application. Basically, you will fill this out and, of course, pay the non-refundable fee. This one is very simple. Some of them aren't this easy, where you can just literally just go in and type all your information in. It's just asking if you're a resident, your PCAT score, when you took it. But then a lot of them will have you do essay type questions, for instance, like this. What steps have you taken to explore the career of pharmacy and to ensure that is the best profession for you? They're trying to see how dedicated you kind of are to getting into these programs, and it's almost like a mini interview before your interview, if that makes sense. And you will fill these out and talk about why you applied and just different little things, so they can kind of get an idea of who you are, why you're applying before you even apply, or before you even get accepted or even given a shot at an interview. Like I said, remember that each school is different. Each school will have different ways to do it. Some you actually have to print out and we'll have to handwrite it and mail it in. A lot of that's been done away now, though. I checked a bunch of different schools before this presentation. A lot of them are kind of like the one I just showed you at Marshall, where you just type in, fill it in. But that being said, you also, doing that, need to be more cautious of spelling, grammar, and things that make you look more professional. This is probably the most important step on PharmCast. You need to review that application. Everything on that application, you have to remember, it is a projection of yourself. It needs to be 100% accurate. All the information needs to be correct before you submit it. You want to make sure everything is right, because once you submit, that's it. It has been submitted. It's over. It's done. It's done with. So once you've submitted your applications, you cannot change anything. Everything is stuck how it is. So you need to make sure all this information is correct before applying. Now, when I made this slide, it's a little bit different from the way that I did the finalization of my PharmCast application. I have on here to pick 10 schools you want to have your application sent to. As we saw whenever I pulled up the website, it is different now. whenever I was applying, you got 10 free schools that went along with your application fee. So you still paid a mass application fee. However, you got to pick 10 schools with that, and every school after that was a charge. Well, it looks like now they've changed it to where they charge you per school. You don't get those 10 free. They charge you per school, and it looks like it was a little bit more expensive now than what it was when I went through. But just keep that in mind. You're also going to want a reminder that you are paying an application fee, and it can be kind of hefty. Just keep that in mind, that you want to put some money aside if this is something you are really wanting to do. And we'll get into that here in just a minute. I'll talk a little bit, I won't go into full depth, but I'll talk a little bit about my cost out of pocket to apply. Also, everything you need to make sure is submitted prior to the deadline. This deadline of April 1st right here is very important. After this, even if your application is not done, that's the cutoff period for every single school. If you haven't applied by April 1st, that's it. They will not take applications after this point. And after April 1st, no changes can be made to your PharmCAS either. Whatever you have filled out and sent to PharmCAS, that is it at that point. You are stuck with it. Moving on. So you've made it through the PharmCAS application process, and you have been offered an interview at one of the schools that you've applied to, or multiple. This is where you sell yourself. You need to be yourself and show that you really care about pharmacy. The interview needs to be more like a conversation. You have to remember, you are going to be spending the next 4 years with these people, and you need to make it as friendly as possible and be able to talk and communicate. They're going to be nervous as well. Believe me, I was part of the interview process actually, other than just being a student applying. So I went through the application process like you all will if you're applying, and I sat through it, but I also was on the other side of the seat, and I helped professors watch on the interview side of it, and I saw kind of how that went about. You're going to want to be prepared for these. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. Marshal's, for instance, was an 8-hour day. It is a long interview. I don't know how many of you all will be an RA, but actually the process is pretty similar. So I had a little bit of a leg up, and being an RA did help in this situation. For Marshall, what we did was we had a couple of different ways to interview. You had the one-on-one with a professor and a student. Another part of your interview was we got into groups of about 6, and they gave us a problem to solve together. For instance, my group here, our problem that day was they gave you a list of people that were on a boat. There's like 22 or 23 people on that list. Each person weighed a different amount, but each person had a set of skills to survival. Your boat is sinking. You have 30 minutes to decide with your group on who you would save and why, and your rescue boats could only hold so much weight. So you had to work together as a group to figure out who you would save, and that to them shows that you can work well with others, cooperate, your communication skills. It shows a leadership, shows many different qualities about yourself in the group session. On the other hand, other pharmacy schools, I know, for instance, the other pharmacy school here, the University of Charleston of West Virginia, what they do is it's only like a 30-minute interview with you and 2 professors, and you're in and out. Like I said, every school is different. They all do it different ways, but the questions are generally pretty much the same in terms of when they interview you. So you're going to want to practice some of these questions prior to going to your interview. I think I have some of the questions on the next slide here. Yeah, so interview format, they're going to have you do stuff that, like my school, they'll have you do decision-making skills with group activities just to make sure you all can work well together and talk together. And then you're going to have critical type questions. This is usually the one-on-one that you'll have with the professor. So they'll ask you stuff like, what trends in the industry have you noticed? And what's caught your eye about pharmacy here lately? So a question you could have right now potentially, would be COVID. They'll ask you, what have you heard? What medications have you heard are being used to treat it? Just new thing. How do you feel about the vaccine? They'll also ask you this: why did you choose their university specifically? And my advice to you would be to look up this university and see some of the qualities that they like, what they like to talk about. Marshall, for me, they were very keen on group stuff, which was different. Most schools follow a lecture format where you're just sitting in a lecture. However, my school focuses on you do a lot of group stuff and work together as a group, because that's essentially what you're going to be doing as a healthcare provider. You may be a pharmacist working in a thing, but you are part of a healthcare team. So you won't be just the pharmacist. You will have a pharmacist, a doctor, nurses. You will have your nurses. It's all part of a healthcare team. You'll have a social worker on the team as well, and you all have to work together to do what's best for your patient. And that's kind of the format they're looking for. They're also going to ask you personal questions. Like, one of my questions I had, tell of a time when you showed a great amount of leadership, or tell of a time when you had a great amount of self-control, etc. They'll do something like that so they can hear more about you, but then hear about how you handled a certain situation. How do you know you got accepted? The school will generally give you a call to let you know whether you've been accepted or not. You also I got a nice fancy letter in the mail saying that congratulations, I've been accepted in the Marshall Pharmacy School. They can send you letters, give you a call. Recommend answering your phone, even if you don't recognize the number, or actually have signal to answer the phone. I was currently up in Highlands, actually hiking, whenever I got my call, and I was standing outside of one of the shoe shops outside. And finally, my signal finally came back, and I saw that I had missed a call from a 304 area code, which is here. And I called back. I was like, I know that's my call I got accepted. And I called back, and it was the dean. And he said, yeah, I called you a little bit ago, but congratulations on being accepted. So it would just make sure you answer the phone. It's not that it's an unprofessional thing, but it's always a sigh of relief once you realize that you've been accepted to whatever program, any program that you've applied to, even if it's just one or two, it doesn't matter. It's a great feeling and a sigh that it's all done and that you've gotten in. So I highly recommend just paying attention to your phone a little bit and making sure that you know that you got in. Here's some very valuable points that I kind of want to either reiterate or that I haven't mentioned so far. Again, transcripts have to be sent by you. For WCU students, remember, Zach said you can do it online now on my WCU. Very important that you actually send that out and not think like me that PharmCast was actually going to do it for you, because nothing's going to be done for you. You got to do it all by yourself. Going to pharmacy school, you can go to pharmacy school after 2 years. With the prerequisite courses, all you have to do is complete those prerequisite courses to get in. Those are the only things that are required to get in. This, however, is a double-edged sword. If you go after only doing the prerequisites and you actually get into pharmacy school and start doing it and realize you hate it and this is not for you, you either are going to have to go back to get your degree, or and also keep in mind that you racked up debt in pharmacy. The year or two of pharmacy school it took you to figure that out, and having to go back again to go finish your bachelor's. But this will work out for you if you do know that pharmacy is right for you and you just do the prerequisites, and it will save you money in the long run. You just kind of have to pick and choose whatever your preference is, and whatever works best for you, you need to decide. I finished my 4-year degree. I loved my time at Western. I knew that I was going to do pharmacy from the get-go, but I feel like finishing a bachelor's degree, if you finish a bachelor's degree, it will also look good in terms of applying to pharmacy school, because they will see that you've completed another program, that you've rigorously completed another academic study, and that can boost your basically selling point if you're not as high up on the chain of like some of these other applicants. But like I said, it will cost you more money if you go that route. We did have some students in my class that actually did the super fast track program of where they did early college in high school and did the prerequisites in early college. So they were going to pharmacy school at 18. I don't know if I really recommend doing that. They have kind of struggled a little bit, but at 18, I wouldn't have been able to handle the amount of material and the amount of responsibility that comes to do a doctorate. So finishing off my 4-year degree was definitely very beneficial to me. We had a lot of people who have done 2 and 3 years, and they did just fine because they had time to mature and time to establish how to study, time management, and everything. Your letters of recommendation are very, very important. You need to make sure that you pick someone that you know is going to write a very good review about you and they can speak very highly of you. Early decision is an amazing way to apply. It helps you get ahead of the group. It lets you get your applications in early. It lets schools see you in the application pool even longer for the schools that you apply to. It will tell them and it will also let them see whether you've been accepted by other schools or not. I don't know how they look at that quite, but the earlier you can apply in the year when the application process starts, the better. So I'd recommend starting applying in like September or October. You need to be on it as soon as possible would be the best thing. Prior to going into pharmacy, I'd also recommend before you apply to either work in a pharmacy or to job shadow. Like I said, pharmacy school is a long, hard road. You are getting a doctorate of pharmacy. It is hard and very strenuous, but very rewarding. But if you don't enjoy the profession, you will be miserable. I recommend at least working in a pharmacy, talking to someone that's in pharmacy, job shadowing, doing something so you can learn more about the profession itself before you actually apply and take all the time to do this and get in and realize this just isn't it for you. Some more pearls to know. Pharmacy schools love community service. Love, love, love community service. Whenever we were doing the interview process, we'd ask people if they had done any form of community service, how many hours they've done, what they've done. They look really high into this, as it will show that not only when you come to pharmacy school, but they made us mandatory do so many hours of community service per semester that we had to complete and have signed off and everything during our P1, P2, P3, and P3 year. You had to complete community service. So they love to see that you help out the community, which is good it shows the university that you applied to is doing good for the community, going out helping, essentially. Research is another very important topic. I did a little bit of research, but nothing pharmacy or medical based whenever I was in school, which I kind of wish I would have done a little bit more of. However, research with a professor, for instance, like Dr. Cohen in biochem, I know she does a lot of medical type research. She was doing cancer cell research or something along those lines whenever I was in. So it would have been nice to jump on that. And you can learn a little bit more about medicine and pharmacy, that it all coexists. Again, working in a pharmacy would be amazing. You can become a pharmacy technician while you're in college or high school. You have to be at least 18, obviously, to apply. But working in a pharmacy would be great. It should give you kind of hindsight and put you a little bit of ahead of some people, at least for your first year. Again, focus on your core science classes, study for the PCAT, and primarily focus on those biology and chemistry courses, as that's what the vast majority of your PCAT is going to be. But with the PCAT course, they will be long essays. You'll sit there through the scrolling and reading through this case it gives you there could be an easy answer down at the bottom that you really didn't need to read 2 or 3 pages for. Just depends. I'd recommend starting at the question and read the question first and then go back in the paragraph and make sure you then read it. For pharmacy school, also, owning a car is mandatory. You will have to have a car. I know some students, whenever I was an undergrad, did not have a vehicle. They'd have their parents and everything drop them off. Your last year of rotations, for instance, what I am doing currently, I'm driving to and from work, which could be anywhere from an hour from the school, which, I mean, if you live like I do, probably about 20 minutes or so from the school, you could potentially be driving an hour and a half there and back daily. And you'll have to drive to school and rotations because more than likely, you will not be on campus. All right, here's the biggie. Application fees. This is where they get you. Applying to pharmacy school is not cheap at all. It is kind of expensive, and you need to be aware of all fees that are included when applying. For instance, you'll have your PharmCast application fee, which, as we saw, started racking up as I have here to, if you want to apply to more than 10 schools, but like I said, that has changed apparently. So they will charge you per school. Last night I played around a little bit just to see how expensive 10 schools was to apply to. And just the PharmCast, just applying to those 10 schools with your transcript and all that information was $710. It can rack up substantially with the more schools you apply to. Same thing with your supplemental application. Most of them have fees on top of that too. So you will pay per supplemental application fee to each individual school. That can add to the total, and you will also be traveling for these interviews. If you get an interview, you also have to keep in mind that you'll be traveling to the school. So that's gas, food, etc. And if you need to stay in a hotel for a night, that'll cost you. And your PCAT, taking the PCAT will also cost you some money too. You'll have to pay the application fee to register for the PCAT and take it. And that's why you really need to focus and study hard on it, so you don't have to take it more than one time, because you don't want to pay that registration fee more than once. For pharmacy school, just to apply, I paid is just a little bit over $1,000 just to apply, and I only applied to 5 schools. I got the 10 free schools that came with my PharmCast application. However, I only did 5 supplemental applications. So applying to 5 schools essentially cost me $1,000. Like I said, it gets very expensive, but it is well worth it. Once you're in a pharmacy school or even applying to, you need to pay attention to the tuitions for each school and how much you're going to be paying. Most of the schools are about the same, honestly. The cheapest school in North Carolina is UNC Chapel Hill. They're about mid $20,000, somewhere in there, and it could possibly go up to $30,000 your last year, because at each year you progress, your school goes up a little bit. But it is the cheapest because it is the only technically in-state public school. Yes, you have Wingate and Campbell. However, Wingate and Campbell are both private. And like I said, High Point University is not accredited, so I would not recommend applying currently. If they become accredited, then by all means. Most schools, though, will cost you between $30,000 and $40,000 a minimum per year. It just depends on how much extra money you're going to have to take out to live while you're in pharmacy school. I have some people in my class that are taking closer to $60,000 and $70,000 a year, just because they have to have an apartment and they have to pay for food, etc. If you have family members that live near the school, like I do, luckily, good thing to do is to stay with them to save you quite a bit of money. It saves me about $10,000 or $20,000 a year. So I highly recommend just being very wary of how much it costs to apply and how much tuition is for each of these schools. This money does rack up, and you will have to pay it back with about a 6 to 7% interest rate. And when you're talking 6 to 7% interest on almost a $200,000 loan, you're talking a lot of money. All right. Now that we've gotten through the application process, I'm going to talk about a few misconceptions about pharmacy in general. First thing most people think of when they think pharmacists is they only count pills, or they only count by 5s, and that's all they do all day. That is completely not true. It's actually the furthest thing from the truth. Pharmacists actually rarely count pills. Your techs are usually have technicians in the pharmacy with you. So that goes to my bullet point number 3 right there, where everyone in the pharmacy is a pharmacist. You have technicians that help you as the pharmacist to fill these prescriptions or to fill an IV order, unless you're a clinical pharmacist. It just kind of depends on what field that you go into. Retail-wise, though, pharmacists actually hardly count pills at all. Most of their job in the community or retail setting is to verify prescriptions, check all medications that the patient is currently taking, if there is any interactions between any of the medications. Could this possibly harm the patient? Did their dose increase? Why? What disease states do they have? Etc. There's a lot that goes into it, more than just counting by 5s. If we counted by 5s for a doctorate, that'd be that would be amazing. But It's not the truth. Pharmacists aren't doctors. Like I said, this is a doctoral program. You will come out with a doctorate of pharmacy. It was not a doctorate program until I think it was either early 2000s or the late 90s that they changed it from a bachelor of pharmacy to a doctorate of pharmacy. I would assume that's just because the amount of material has increased. There's more drugs on the market, obviously, now than what there used to be. And also on top of that, now you're getting more involved with pharmacy advocacy. Pharmacists are promoting more to where we can contribute more to healthcare teams. And essentially, pharmacists can almost do everything but diagnose a patient now. I've actually had two rotations where I was in the hospital setting in my clinical pharmacy, like my clinical rotations. I had one where I was dosing a patient on warfarin, which for those of you that don't know is a blood thinner, and you have to dose adjust it based on their levels in the blood. And as the pharmacist, I would sit there and look at their levels, their INR level, which is how thin the blood is. Higher the number, thinner it is, lower, thicker. But you would dose them based on what range you wanted them in and change their doses around. And you would be basically co-practicing with a physician he would slightly review your orders, but basically at this point, he trusted the pharmacist to make the correct call on medication dosing. Also, I've had a rotation where we were working and the doctors on table rounds were asking the pharmacist, what should we do? And for this patient, they have this disease state, and here's their lab values, and here's their current medications. What should we give them, and what dose? It's all part of a healthcare team, and everybody comes together and works together to complete the greater good for your patient. Another misconception is pharmacists have to fill a prescription. This is not true either. I've been to a couple of pharmacies where actually we've denied several people. One, because what they're either trying to get us to do was illegal, unethical, or just we weren't going to do it just because it wouldn't make sense to fill a certain prescription that didn't need to be filled. And another misconception possibly is that there's no job diversity. Pharmacy has gotten to the point now where there is several different kinds of fields that you can go into, which I'll cover here in just a minute. But it's starting to get very diverse, especially, like I said, we're pharmacists through APHA, which is the American Pharmacists Association, is trying to talk to different boards of pharmacies and board of medicine to allow us to do more and more and provide more for our patients. Eventually, honestly, I could see it to where pharmacists actually can write general prescriptions for like blood pressure and just generic health care things for like high blood pressure, diabetes, etc. It's kind of already started going that way. Pharmacists actually are co-practicing with physicians currently to do birth control now. So some pharmacists can actually write birth control prescriptions, so you don't have to see a doctor. It just kind of varies. Some more like I said, there are many fields in the pharmacy. Not all that you see is CVS and Walgreens. So it's the retail setting that you're going to see pharmacists. Pharmacists are in hospitals, filling your IVs, and patients counseling, talking medications, talking about bettering their health, talking about diet. It's very well rounded. Like I said, anything medical you could think about, we pretty much hit on and focus on. Another misconception here is only chemistry majors go to pharmacy school. Like I said, all that you need to go to pharmacy school are those prerequisites. I have a biology degree, for instance, so I don't, but you could even have in English. But as long as you have these prerequisites, doesn't matter. You have the prereqs and you're good to go. So an English major and you want to go to pharmacy school, you need to hit up on those prereqs. Again, we talked about how you don't need a bachelor's degree before going to pharmacy school. Again, that's your double-edged sword. You kind of just have to decide what's best for you and what do you as a person want to complete in life. What accomplishments do you want to do? I wanted to finish my bachelor's degree. Plus, I love my time at Western. It was great, but you just kind of need to decide what the best thing for you is. So here are some of the different pharmacy careers paths you can choose from. This is not all inclusive. As you can see, there are several different things on the list. Community pharmacy, that's your CVS, Greens, etc. Hospital pharmacy, that's, you could be doing rounds with doctors, you could be filling IVs. Clinical pharmacy, that's, you could be counseling patients, renally dosing. Ambulatory care is like the Coumadin clinic, like I just talked about, where it's more of an outpatient setting where the patient individually and compound rotation compounding currently actually make the medications and make specific capsules, troches, suppositories, and many things just to suit a specific patient's need. You have pharmacy, which is like Baxter's, where they create IVs. They actually have a pharmacist in the line that everything in the IV is correct and correctly made. Consultant pharmacy, that's like you kind of have med pharmacy where you just essentially work with patients. Internet pharmacy, same thing. Vet pharmacy, you work with animals. A lot of the medications used on people are not used on animals. I've had several people bring in prescriptions for an animal and I have no idea what it is because I've never seen it before. It is specifically for medication for animals. So they have veterinarian for its own practice. Nuclear pharmacy, where some drugs are radioactive and you will work with those. Military pharmacy, after completing pharmacy school, you can do a military type residency. I've looked into doing something similar, either Force or Navy. And that's something to always, because they might pay your loans. Specialty pharmacy you can look at, they basically give medications that are not stored in your retail pharmacy. They do special medications such as certain types of insulins or rheumatoid arthritis medication. They're more along the lines of injection medications or anti-rejection medications for if someone, for instance, has like a kidney transplant. You have your home infusion pharmacy. This is very similar to IVs. I'll have a rotations with home infusion at the end. So I don't know quite exactly all what they do, but I know it works a lot with IV administration for home usage. Pharmacy research is another thing. If you're not into community or actually working with patients, pharmacy research is essentially you can work with drug manufacturers, you can do testing, you can do clinical trials to study new drugs, to see how they work in the body. And they have pharmacy teams. That's how new vaccines, new medications, et cetera, are made today. They go through 5 different stages of clinical trials, and they have these clinical pharmacists that's all they do is they just research these medications in like a laboratory type setting. And teaching pharmacy, I know Zach was talking that he's thought about doing it. Teaching pharmacy is another thing after you finish pharmacy school. Some programs like for instance, mine offers a teaching certificate where you can teach at a certain grade level and above, and they will certify you in teaching, and you can actually go and teach pharmacy school. My experience with it. So it's been a roller coaster of up and downs, not gonna lie, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been very, very rough and very, very hard, and probably the hardest thing that I have ever done, but it's very gratifying. I've spent so much time studying it. In undergrad, I thought that I was studying a lot. No, it wasn't even close. For my exams, I'd only study about 2 days out. And I thought, yeah, I was good and I did good. I did fine in undergrad. Pharmacy school, it will be an everyday study. You will constantly every day be reviewing this material. And not only that, but if you work like I did, probably more than I should have, you will live and breathe pharmacy every second. You'll wake up and go to class, then you'll get off, you go to work, or you'll get out of class, take a little break and study. And you will have to do this or you won't pass. You will not be there next year if you do not study. It is like I said, it's been a very rough road, but like I said, it's been very gratifying knowing now that I'm in my final year and about finished. My favorite things here that I have enjoyed about pharmacy school the most, I've loved meeting the new people that I have met in my classes, not only just the people in my classes, but patients as well. I've met some awesome patients that I've talked to and just had the experience to get to meet. Learning about all these different medications, hundreds of medications. One of the first classes that you'll take in pharmacy school is called Top 300, and it's the top 300 drugs, and you'll learn just about as much as you possibly can about those 300 drugs, and that's only one class. I've loved helping people and improve their lives. I think if you're going into pharmacy school, again, this needs to be a primary thing that you want to do, is to help people. This is what you're in this profession for, is to help people and improve their well-being. Things I've enjoyed the least, obviously, is going to be studying and the over amount of time that I've taken to study just to keep up academically. Like I said, for some of my exams, I would study a week out ahead of time to study for these exams. Sometimes even more than that, just kind of depending on the subject, because you have to learn your time management skills and what classes you need to study more versus what you need to study less, etc. But I would study probably about a week ahead of time for each exam. And just to give an example, I would come home from class, study till like 10 or 11, and then go to bed. And then the couple days, for instance, if I had a weekend before my exam, your exam block times are different, but for the most part, mine were in the afternoon. So what I would do is on the weekends, I'd wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning. Yes, I know most of y'all probably just made a face at 4 or 5 in the morning to wake up and study, but I thought the same thing. But I woke up at 4 or 5 in the morning and I would study till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, sometimes even later. And then the next morning, and then the morning prior to my exam, I again 4 or 5 in the morning, study till exam time, take my exam, and just crash. And you just kind of go through that repetitious cycle of studying and not studying. And also, as you go along each year, it gets harder and harder. When I first was getting into pharmacy school, I heard that P2 year was the hardest as a P1. P1 year was kind of rough, not awful, but it was kind of a little rough. P2 year was very difficult because that's when you start really getting into your pharmacotherapy and starting getting into your drugs and knowing a lot about medications. P3 year was even harder, and it just progressed and got harder and harder. But by P2 year, you're kind of used to it, and you just, it's okay, I'm good to go, and you just get used to it and go through that cycle of studying and learning knowing how to study and knowing what you need to do. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact me or email me at Valentine26@Marshal. It might take me a couple of days to get back to you guys because I'm on rotations and working and kind of busy, but I will try my best to get back and answer whatever questions that I may have or that you may have about getting into pharmacy school, or even it didn't have to be about pharmacy school. You can ask me about just an experience, or if you have a question about like what we study, I can kind of give you an example. So I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation part of this with what questions do you guys have for me?
All right, Jacob, I got a couple for you. First off, with the applications, I'm not sure if this applied to you or not, but if you retake a class, so you take a prereq, you don't do as hot as you wanted to in it, and then you retake it on the PCAS system, do they take the highest grade when you're putting in your transcripts? Do they take both? How are they looking at those, if you know?
So this is how this works. I actually did do that. Organic 2, the first time that I took it, I made a C and was not very content with that. Although I had several people who told me, you made a C, just move along. I was not very happy with my Organic 2. So I went and retook it and made an A the second time I took it. However, the way PharmCast does it is they will take whatever score you made the first time. So C is 2 and you made an A the second time, it's 4. So now it's a 3. So now you basically made a B in it, is how they do it. And that's how they calculate your GPA. And each time you take it, they'll average it out.
Okay. I had something to add with the accreditation. And this is from other fields specifically, just general pre-professional stuff. If a school is working on becoming accredited, their plan with that is to make sure that they are fully accredited by the time they graduate their first class. So really, if you choose to go to a school that's not accredited at the time you apply, kind of like Jacob did, you're putting your cards on that deck. You're making a gamble for that school. And a lot of times that gamble pays off, because many schools who apply for accreditation get approved because it's in the school's interest to get approved and be accredited, because then they have that new program. But as Jacob said, sometimes schools don't get accredited, and sometimes their timeline can be extended. So he was talking about those students who might be going to High Point, might be graduating. If a student doesn't graduate, and Jacob, this is coming up to a question for you if you know it. If a student graduates from a program that's not accredited, when it becomes accredited, are they going to be cleared to take that test? Are they going to be cleared to take their boards?
They will not.
Okay. So a school has to be accredited when they graduate to be able to take their boards.
Yep, that's correct. So they will look at it as, so the first Marshal class that went through obviously started, they got accredited my P1 year. So the first class that came through was 4 years prior. You have to wait till that first class graduates before you're accredited, just as you just stated. But you have to graduate when they are accredited. So if they have accreditation and lose it, this actually will work in your favor too if you're already in. If they have accreditation while you are in school, for instance, let's say I was a P1 or P2. Let's just go with my second year. I was in my second year. Marshall had accreditation, and then they lost it while I was in school. I still get the benefits of them being accredited. As long as you are in school, you will get the benefits. Now, if you are not in school, you apply and get accepted, and they are not accredited, you won't get it. Or if you are at an unaccredited school, but prior to being accredited, it doesn't count. You would have, I believe you'll have to do some extra work or whatever. You'll have to do something with the school. They have a way of doing it. I'm not sure. I haven't looked that much into it, the accreditation boards and stuff, but
okay.
I would assume that you just go through the school again, not completely, but they'll probably have you do certain things to meet accreditation standards as like a recap. And then after that, then you can reapply.
Okay. So it's not as though it's a lost cause at that point. Like there's no way you're getting, you're going to be able to take the boards or anything like that. It's just extra steps.
That's correct. But you, like I said, you never know when they're going to get accredited. And again, keep in mind, pharmacy, you'll have that debt that will become live 6 months after you graduate. So if they're not accredited and you can't take your boards and sit for an exam and actually practice your pharmacy for the job that you're wanting to do, you'll be paying that debt and you won't be a pharmacist. So I don't really recommend doing that.
Okay. Just taking a note. All right, so you're in your P4 year, so you've taken most of your classes. You've built that foundation because now you're doing your internships, you're doing your rotations. Out of everything you've taken thus far, what would you say is the hardest class you've taken?
Oh, wow. That's a rough question. That's kind of a, they've all been fairly difficult. I'd say I struggled a little bit with cardiology. Hematology and oncology was very difficult. I had that in my last semester. It's cancer drugs, rheumatoid arthritis. Your cancer drugs are very hard to pronounce and very difficult to say. And it's kind of hard to word associate them with like mechanism of actions and how they work. I'd probably say those are more than likely my top two. Endocrine was not that bad. Immunology is hard your first year. Everyone struggles a little bit with immunology. Biostats can be hard if you don't know math. Like I said, all the courses are challenging. Like they're very challenging. But if I had to say my top two, it would be cardio or hemonc.
Okay. And then I think this is my last question for you. Out of everything you did during your undergraduate time, jobs, class, extracurricular activities, is there anything that really stood out for you, or that somebody maybe told you stood out on your application that you felt was really beneficial to your application and getting into pharmacy school, or maybe help prepare you for pharmacy school?
A lot of them actually, a big thing that helped me out actually was the RA position. A whole lot. it helped with those interview questions, like I said, and actually a lot of it, like the scenarios that I could give, I had a lot of experience as with certain RA things that they saw and they're like, wow, I didn't know stuff like that happened. You had to deal with it. And I was like, and then going into further detail and explaining that, like that really showed out.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that is it for us. Is there any last things you want to add to the presentation? We do appreciate your time.
There is nothing on the presentation. That is it. And I have a Kahoot to play if you want to show the students that and see how well your knowledge is, or to where they can see it, or you can, after this, you and I can just do it as a free-for-all. You can do it for fun. Your choice.
No, I mean, I'm fine with putting it on the screen. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so let me go ahead and, do you have the app, I'm assuming?
Do I need to download the app? That is the question.
You do, or you can do it on your computer, but I would suggest doing it on your, well, you can do it either way. It doesn't really matter which way you do it. You can see answer choices a little bit better on the computer, but it doesn't matter because you'll see the answer. You can see the answer choices on your screen whenever I get it pulled up here. So.
Okay.
Get that pulled up here.
There we go. I can just go to that website.
Yep. I said all you'll do is go to join it, and or on the app, and you'll just type in that number. See how much you know. So the first 5 questions I've made are from my PowerPoint. And 5 questions I've organized, some of them like pharmacy school questions where you need to pay attention to what you're answering. There it is. So, but the first 5 questions are from my PowerPoint, but you'll need to pay attention to some of them because, like I said, I organized some of them like pharmacy questions where it's all true with the exception of one part that makes it false, and therefore it doesn't make it a correct answer. Also, in pharmacy school, there is no partial credit. Keep that in mind. So it's all right or all wrong. The last 5 questions to see how much pharmacy knowledge you actually have and how much you know. And I don't expect you to get all of them right, but it's just for fun. So.
All right, and I'm going to turn my video off just to make sure we're carrying enough bandwidth for this. But I'm still here, so don't freak out.
All right. How many letter recommendations is recommended when submitting an application to PharmCast? Yep. I don't know why I accidentally clicked one, but the correct answer, yes, is on this is 3. I just know that you got that one. So good job.
Excellent.
And you answered it quick, so you got a lot of points.
All right.
Next question.
I like points.
What PCAT and GPA is recommended having when applying to pharmacy school? Yep. So 50 percentile, or they're looking for a 3.0 GPA or above. Like I said, you can fluctuate a little bit on the PCAT, but definitely a 3.0 GPA is highly recommended, at least, at minimum.
And that 3.0 GPA is for your prerequisites only or overall?
Prerequisites only.
Okay. Yeah, I'm winning.
2 for 2. True or false? A bachelor's degree is required when applying to pharmacy school.
Oh, this one's easy.
Yep. So like I said, these first 5 questions I made nice and easy for you because the pharmacy questions are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those.
Dang, you're on fire. Look at that.
Excellent.
So you get more points as you answer questions correctly in a row. So let's see how high you can go. Name a website where you begin. Name the website where the application for pharmacy school begins. Yep. Pharmcast.org. That's where everything is done with the exception of your supplemental applications. Everything is done on PharmCast.
I definitely called it PCAS earlier in the presentation. So
It's all right. True or false? Supplemental application fees are paid on FarmCast.
false.
Yep, that's correct. You have to send them each individually to each individual school, and they will have on there whether you submit it to the school when you finish the application or they'll have you mail it, one of the two. All right, here's where the fun begins, and here's where the pharmacy questions come in. So let's see how much you know, Zach. What is the brand name for acetaminophen?
Okay.
Yep. The Advil, Motrin, and ibuprofen are all the same thing. They're all ibuprofen. So good job on that one. And these are not reflective of pharmacy school questions, by the way, for people who are watching. These are actually very simplistic, very, like, you know this off the rip coming into school. So these are just very generic, easy questions compared to what you will get in school. Pseudoephedrine can only be bought behind the pharmacy counter due to it being used to make which illegal drug? Yep, that's correct. Sudafed is used to make meth. That's why when you go to the pharmacy, you have to buy it behind the counter and have to show a ID, and you have to be 18 or older, and you can only buy a certain amount per month. So you can only buy 3.6 grams of pseudoephedrine in a 30-day period. Fun fact.
Now, do different states have different regulations, or is that a national regulation?
It's a national, but so there's a federal that is a certain limit. However, some states can be even stricter.
Okay.
So that's the federal restriction, but states can vary and can also make it even more strict if they want to.
Okay.
All right, here comes the next two are a little more difficult.
All right.
I'm progressively making them a little more difficult, but not too difficult. Which of the following drugs can be used for a mild allergic reaction? Loratadine, cetirizine, diphenhydramine, or fexofenadine?
Oh.
Yep. So diphenhydramine, the brand name for that is Benadryl.
That's what I was thinking.
Loratadine is Claritin, cetirizine is Zyrtec, and fexofenadine is Allegra.
Oh, so they're all allergy medications.
Yep.
Okay.
They are all antihistamines, every single one of them. And actually, you can technically use loratadine, cetirizine, and stuff if you want to, but they won't be as effective as the Benadryl. And also, Benadryl will make you more tired. Last question. Go ahead.
That one was just a guess, so.
Yep. All right, so last one's the hardest. Let's see how much you know about, oh, no, it's not. Sorry, controlled substances are regulated by which governmental agency? Is that?
Oh, I got it wrong. There we go.
All right, it's the DEA. I accidentally clicked on the wrong one when I made the quiz.
Oh, okay.
So you are actually, we can ignore it. It's not going to give you your lovely score at the end because I misclicked, but
no worries.
You had it correct. So right now you've got them all right. We're going to try one last question and see how well you do. This last one is the hardest question. And let's see how current you know. What medication combination is currently being used to treat COVID-19? Amoxicillin and prednisone, remdesivir and dexamethasone, hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. And I can't pronounce that last one, methylprednisolone. It's like used to can you match?
I got it 50-50 between blue and yellow, so I'm going to go blue.
That's correct.
Yes.
So actually, those two have both been mentioned in the news. However, hydroxychloroquine is not recommended any longer. It was there in the beginning, and doctors were writing it left and right with no diagnosis code or nothing and prescribing it even to their family members. And let's just say the Board of Pharmacy put a stop to that pretty quickly before more research could be done. And currently, remdesivir, which is an antiviral medication, is being used with dexamethasone, which is a steroid, to help with that. Although a vaccine is supposedly going to be approved by the end of October. It is in stage 4 of clinical trials. And our best student here, number 1, Zach.
Number 1 out of 1. Yeah.
And you actually got 10 out of 10, but I misclicked. But yes, good job.